everybody, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Today, just a tiny fraction, little bit, 40 minutes late. No special reason. Just as usual, too much to do in the day. But I'm ready. And let's do a podcast here. At first, we need to, of course, do a quick test recording to see that everything's working. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a podcaster.
Well, that looks like it's working. Wait, did that come through on the stream? Yeah, okay. That does look good. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a podcaster.
Well, that looks like it's working. Hello, Indy. How are you doing? How's my head today? Why are you asking me that? I have no idea. Do you mean because of the Witcher stream last night, where I drank a little bit? But that was I can hold my liquor. Didn't have any head problems at all. I was a bit sleepy this morning, but that was probably just because I stayed up too late. Hello, Mode 7. How are you doing? Nice to see you all. Right. I think we can do this. I think we can start this. As usual, quick disclaimer here. I'm not going to interact with chat as much as I usually do just because I'm recording a podcast, and it would not be fair to the people who will be listening to this later, on their devices. So just so you know, I see everything you're saying. And if it's important, I'm gonna get into it. But I do appreciate that you're here. I do appreciate the live feedback. It makes this much more enjoyable for me than just talking to myself in an empty room. So thanks for being there. Let's do this. Let's do this right away. I wanna get the show on the road. Right here. Ooh, here we go. Hello everybody, you're listening to The Private Citizen, defending your right to have something to hide. This is episode 56 for Wednesday the 10th of February 2021. Getting off the WhatsApp grid. Hello everybody, my name is Fab. I'm coming to you live from the lockdown city of Düsseldorf on the Rhine. In the Rhineland. Unsurprisingly, in Germany. How are you doing? Nice to have you on board. This is the second year of The Private Citizen, where we still talk about politics and we talk about privacy. And today we're going to talk about messengers, because I had on the docket for a while to talk about this WhatsApp terms of service brouhaha, and so far I hadn't gotten around to it, and I was planning that for this week. And then I did some coverage all weekend on FOSDEM, the open source conference, which usually in Brussels, but this year was remote. And that was organized over another messenger, or messaging protocol called Matrix, and it's very interesting. So let's talk about that. And once again I've started into an introduction there, and now I can't remember if I said my name. And usually I do this, and then I listen back to the show, and I'm like, well, you did say your name, but in case I didn't, hello, my name's Fab, and Fabian Alexander Scherche. If you want the full name, but just call me Fab. It's easier. Yeah, and it's nice of you to be here. And I hope you've settled in. I've got myself a lovely Earl Grey, which isn't quite hot anymore. That's a problem. But yeah, let's do this. I'm just stalling for time there because I'm actually thinking about any housekeeping that I have to mention, but I don't think there is any. I mean, I did like 2 episodes last week. That's probably, we talked about everything there. So I think we should get right into the first topic of our show here, which is WhatsApp. So I'm guessing I won't have to explain to you what WhatsApp is. I mean, most people listening to this will probably, like me, be geeks and nerds and people who are interested in technology. But even if you aren't, chances are you know what WhatsApp is. Chances are you using it. Pretty much everybody's using it, as far as I can tell. I'm using it, certainly. And you might have even, I don't know when this was, but a few weeks ago, we had another one of these. Oh my God, they're changing the terms of service. WhatsApp, it's horrible. Everybody get off WhatsApp. And this seemed to be the biggest one of these, I wouldn't call it a scare, but movements. Basically it's somebody writes about this, usually in the tech press, then other people in the tech press write about it. Then the mainstream media picks it up and everybody writes about it, everybody talks about it, and suddenly you have like your friends, suddenly everybody's on Signal, and Signal keeps mad. I think they actually, keeps going mad with telling you that your friends are on there. I think they actually went down because of this for a bit. But in this case, I think millions of users apparently left WhatsApp. At least that is who's the story is. The Guardian saying about this. WhatsApp loses millions of users after terms update. Of course, you will find all these links as usual at privatecitizen.press. And this is, I mean, I've been writing about WhatsApp, especially about messengers, for a long time. I kind of picked it up as well. I was writing about it for The Age back in the day. But then when I came to Heise, it was kind of like, I think, a vacant topic, like security of messenger security. Nobody was really writing about it. So I kind of picked it up there, and I've been writing about WhatsApp ever since. Generally messengers, especially end-to-end encrypted messengers, and about the encryption side. Now, interestingly here with this, I mean, we've seen this ever since I was writing about this. This is maybe the 3rd time I can remember, maybe even the 4th, where there's something happened, everybody get off WhatsApp. And of course, I have a deja vu because, I mean, I'll get to that in a bit, but this is completely not new. This terms of service change wasn't really a change, and it's just called attention of some people to something that happened in 2016, which I wrote about initially as well. Now, interestingly enough, I think founder of Telegram, a guy called Durov, actually called this the largest digital migration in human history, quoting here from The Independent. In a blog post on Thursday, Telegram founder Pavel Durov revealed that Turkish President Recep Erdogan and Brazil leader Jair Bolsonaro were among those who had joined the platform in recent days. Totalitarian leaning world leaders are now on Telegram. I mean, Telegram is something. Lots of people switching to Telegram. I I would not recommend that. I have a deep distrust of Telegram, going back to actually when I wrote one of the first CT stories I wrote about messengers was I did a comparison, and I specifically, this was like a series we did in the magazine with several people, and my specific article was about end-to-end encrypted messages, and I looked at pretty much all of them that were around back in the day, and I looked at where the source code was available. I looked at their encryption, and of course there were messengers where you didn't have source code, and I wrote the open source. I wrote them as well, but the other ones that was much more important. I wrote to the company and said, okay, do you have a way, like a white paper or whatever, a way of explaining your encryption to me, how it works? And I remember I was going back and forth with Telegram specifically, and they were at the time. So this Durov guy is I think it's an expat from Russia. He might have had a falling out with Putin. I don't really know. It's like he's a weird dude. He's always like writing weird blog posts and whatever. But a lot of these people are. Elon Musk's a weird dude. But the company was always a bit weird to me. But as I remember specifically going back and forth with them because they were claiming at the time to be based in Germany. So there are these things that these companies do to kind of make you think, I don't know, it's PR, right? They want trust. So the 3-month guys are going, we're in Switzerland, and Switzerland's really trustworthy. And Telegram at the time was saying we are based partly in Berlin. Now I was interested in that, and I was thinking about maybe even going there and asking them some personal questions, because they weren't really responding in email really well. So I got an address from them for their Berlin office, and I look at it on Google Maps or whatever. I'm like, that's a weird neighborhood I don't think there's an office there. So I call one of the guys, one of my colleagues who was working for Heise, who lived in Berlin, and I said, do you know this neighborhood? Can you maybe go by there? And he was like, yeah, actually on the way to something. I'll drop by. And they didn't have enough. There was nothing there. There wasn't even like a letterbox at that address, right? It wasn't even like a letterbox firm. It was really weird. And ever since that point, I'm skeptical of Telegram. So that's just a quick story about Telegram. Also, I kind of don't like that this guy's just name dropping people here in this interview or in this blog post just for PR reasons. Even though there are people I don't really care about that know whether they're on Telegram. But if you're Erdogan, you probably wouldn't like the company just making that public, probably without asking you, whatever. That seems a bit weird. Anyway, the guy is weird. But I think that the term he used, I put this quote in here, to talk about Telegram and to tell people, another reason, if you want a technical reason not to switch to Telegram, it's still not completely end-to-end encrypted. They have end-to-end encryption, but it's not on by default. And what we've learned in the past is if something like this is not on by default, it will only be used by a very small subset of users. And if we learn something from Snowden, and the thing Snowden said is we need to, one of the arguments actually for going to HTTPS, I did an episode very early on about HTTPS and where it actually has privacy implications and where it doesn't. One of the good reasons for it is, just encrypt everything by default, just make it harder for intelligence services and just shady people to just save everything that's in clear text that's out there. So I always thought that was a good thing. But if you have something like Telegram where you have to enable it, a lot of people will not necessarily enable it. So that is a technical reason. I don't specifically like about them. But I like this term digital migration as well, because I think this is a migration. This is like, to me, it's like a herd of animals running in one direction. You know, one animal starts running and then they start migrating, and nobody along the way thinks about it. So I want to just address quickly these terms of services changes without going into details. It's very simple. WhatsApp was bought, I think, in 2014 by Facebook, right? And Facebook, then at first they said they're not going to exchange data between WhatsApp and Facebook, which is a ludicrous promise. I mean, you knew they would break that. It's like, I mean, why do they buy that app? For the user base and to get the data. That's Facebook's business. It's like them saying, oh, we won't share any data with Instagram. That's just ludicrous. Like, that is idiotic. So the thing is, that was weird to me from the beginning. So I would expect them to share the data. And then 2016, they changed their terms of service, and that was the first time we had one of these huge stories where everybody was like, oh my God, I gotta get off WhatsApp. Now, the interesting thing is, WhatsApp for the longest time was, of course, not end-to-end encrypted. And in a time when they already belonged to Facebook, they implemented end-to-end encryption. And not only did they just implement end-to-end encryption, they implemented really good end-to-end encryption, right? So this is something, I mean, you might know this if you listen to this show, if you listen to me, if you're reading my stuff, but still, for the people, there might be new people here, there might be people who are not aware of that. The protocol that WhatsApp uses to end-to-end encrypt its messages and, all content on there, is the same that Signal uses. In fact, it was implemented by Moxie Marlinspike, the cryptographer who, developed Signal, developed this encryption. This is a specific way of doing end-to-end encryption that I don't think he invented that, but I think Signal, well, it wasn't, I don't think it was even the first time it was like implemented as well, but I guess it made it popular. It's the first time this was implemented in a large-scale app. It's a protocol, or it's a way of encrypting that is usually called a ratcheting mechanism. And to explain that simply, I mean, for a long time, there was end-to-end encryption has been around forever, right? I mean, PGP is essentially end-to-end encryption. But for the longest time, these systems had the problem that, let's say you and me get on Signal, right? And we use that app for like 8 years. And we exchange information securely for 8 years. And then after 8 years or whatever, I'm just picking a random time to say 8 years, one of us loses control of a private key. So a key you can use to decrypt all those messages from 8 years. But we don't notice. Like, this goes to an intelligence service. But from this point on, they can read everything we write. Like, they can read everything. At that point, they can actually read our whole 8-year message history. And then we keep using the app. We keep talking. And we talk for another 8 years. And then we figure out, shit, Snowden story comes out, and we figure out it comes to light that something secret we talked about was snooped. And conventional end-to-end encryption would work in a way where they would have been able, so if at the moment where they got the key, let's say only that key got compromised. Our devices didn't get compromised. They just for some reason, some leak, they got a hand of that key. They would have been able to read the 8 years up till then, and then all the time after, like the other 8 years we communicated. Now, a ratcheting mechanism works in a way where it does like very clever things. It's like, I understand how it works. But it's one of these things where, like, you do the research and you understand it at that moment. You understand how it works. Like, gory detail, right? And then two weeks later you don't anymore because you forget all the details because it's so fucking complicated, but you still have the framework in your mind how it works. But I mean, even if I went through the table and looked it up and then explained it all to you, it would be like 15, 20, 30 minutes of explanation. It wouldn't really do anything for you. You know, you can look it up if you want to. You can really go and look it up, and it's a very interesting way of implementing. It's not even an algorithm; it's a way of doing algorithms. And you know, lots of other programs have and encryption systems are using similar things since then. But basically, what it does is it changes the keys in such a way that at the point where one of our keys got compromised, and it would have been able to read all the 8 years up to that point. If they didn't compromise our device, right, and then still continue to receive the new keys, if they just got that key, then they wouldn't have been able to read anything we said from that point onwards, just the backwards history. And this is very important because we know from Snowden that especially these intelligence agencies, they just, you know, the NSA has huge server farms and huge hard drives, and they just capture everything they can. And they write that to a disk somewhere. And even if it's encrypted and they have no keys, they still write that to a disk. And then they get a key 10 years later, right? And then they can go back and figure out what was encrypted with that key and read all of that. So if they get that key and they have, let's say, 16 years of our message history, in the first case, they can decrypt, like the old school encryption. They can decrypt everything. You can read everything. With the second method, with this ratcheting protocol, half of that would be safe, right? Everything going forward from that key would be safe. It's only backwards, you know, so you can kind of take that key and then it keeps exchanging keys, right? And you can go backwards and you can read all that stuff, but you can't go from that point on forward. And that's a huge thing. Like, that helps you protect a whole lot of information in the face of them just writing all this shit to a disk. So that's basically what Signal brought to the masses. It's very important for a messenger like this, especially where you have a hell of a lot of messengers, and it's just a cool thing. But back to WhatsApp. So that protocol, it's called the Axolotl protocol, is what WhatsApp uses as well. And in fact, I think WhatsApp hired Moxie Marlinspike to implement it, and he talked about it, and he said, not in specific detail, but he said, he thinks they implemented it well. So, in fact, WhatsApp, even in a time when people got more and more skeptical of it because it belongs to Facebook, they were a much more secure messenger than pretty much anything out there, except maybe Signal. Threema was there for a long time, but Threema for a long time was an open source, and for a long time even didn't, like, when I can remember back in the day when I wrote that article and comparing all these encryption systems, I didn't know much more about the encryption of Threema than I did about the encryption of Telegram, for example. Whereas I knew how the Signal encryption worked, encryption worked, because that was all like, open standard and all that. I had source code, and to be fair, with WhatsApp you didn't have that. But I did write a story, or several. We did actually do some research, and I did some, basically not breaking news, but I broke this. This is just an exclusive that we did for the first thing, which is why we translated it into English, and I have an English link. It's a story called "Keeping Tabs on WhatsApp's Encryption," where I explain how we actually checked that WhatsApp is actually using this Axolotl protocol and that it actually works. which is interesting. It's like you could use a third-party library basically written in Python, and you can basically, in the easiest way, just send it messages that are encrypted with this protocol, and if WhatsApp decrypts them correctly, then it must be using this protocol. It's more complicated than this, but so we knew that. So I've never been massively skeptical of WhatsApp, and in fact I was a big proponent of it because a lot of people were already using it, and at the moment where they went and they seamlessly did this, right? They never told anybody, they just switched it on. And Moxie was also very proud of that this worked. They went to end-to-end encryption, and all these millions of people that were using the app for completely different reasons suddenly had end-to-end encrypted communications, which was great. I mean, that was an amazing thing. Now, of course, there's the terms of services change, and I understand people being skeptical when it comes to Facebook, of course. And but the problem with these news stories is that were written again earlier, a few weeks ago as well, is that many of the journalists writing them, they don't know how end-to-end encryption works. And a lot of them didn't even know that WhatsApp was end-to-end encryption. You can read it from the stories. Or they know that, but they're still like, basically they're saying Facebook can read your messages. And the whole point I should have probably said this in the beginning, but end-to-end encryption means, so I use a messenger app, you use it, I send you a message, only you and me can read it. And the servers in between from the company who runs the program can't read it. Right? This is contrasted to what we call transport encryption, which is something like, TLS, HTTPS, right? Where the goal of that is to encrypt, with the website between the client, my web browser reading a website, and the server. And you can also do that with a messenger, right? Pretty much all messengers. I don't know any messenger who people actually use that is not transport encrypted. In most cases they're just TLS. So they encrypt. So what they do is if you use it, I use it, and I send you a message, the message is encrypted from me to the server, is decrypted at the server of the, the provider of the messenger, re-encrypted, and then sent encrypted to you, which means the wider internet can't read it. But it means that the server can see it, and that means that the company, running this app can see it, and that means that if they get subpoenaed or hacked, other people could get it from them, get message contents from them. And so this is why we want end-to-end encryption, because it's been shown that it works, and it's really what we want for this kind of thing. Now, if we're talking privacy, then end-to-end encryption in the case of WhatsApp, Facebook, there's a caveat here. I'm just gonna state something. Of course, there is a caveat. I'm just gonna get into that in a bit. So don't shout at your whatever you're listening this on, iPhone or whatever. Don't shout at me yet. But Facebook can't read the contents of these messages. So if we're thinking about privacy, or WhatsApp can't read these, right? It doesn't matter. Like the toss change doesn't matter, because if we're going message content, there is no data for WhatsApp to give to Facebook. There just is no data there. So what the stories were about, or alleged, most of these stories alleged was happening, that they can read your message contents, is just not true. They cannot do that. Now, the caveat being, of course, with any system, you have to trust the implementer, right? WhatsApp might be end-to-end encrypted, but the company giving you the messenger controls updates of the messenger. They could at any point patch out the end-to-end encryption, and you still think, because the app looks the same to you, that it's still end-to-end encrypted, but in the background, it's not. And Facebook or WhatsApp, whatever, can read all the message content. Now, to check that it's encrypted is not trivial, as you can see by the stories I put, the story I linked in the show notes. If you read that, it's not trivial to check that. So you basically have to trust WhatsApp that they're doing the right thing. But so, if you're using Threema, you have to trust them. If you use Signal, you have to trust them. Now, for me, it's easier to trust a guy like Moxie Marlinspike, who's well known in the industry, who is an anarchist, a well-known anarchist, a guy who's, I think they've kind of, I don't know if they'd stolen it, but like at one point he and a few friends got a boat that was like abandoned, which I think is illegal, and like renovated it and just sailed around the oceans without I don't think they had any sailing licenses or whatever. So he's like, he's probably the last guy who'd sell out to a corporation, but still, I mean, he could. Now the thing you of course have with Signal is it's open source, but that doesn't help you specifically in this point, in this case, because you're not getting the source code, compiling it, and putting it on your iPhone. You can't do that. So you have to trust that, or your Android device. You have to trust that the version of the app you're getting is actually corresponding to the source code, which says there's end-to-end encryption in there. Now there's things like reproducible builds, and I think Threema has that now, and Signal had that for a long time. Where you can actually, what you do is, let's say Android's easier to do. You get the source code, you compile it, but you can't just compile it. You have to compile it with the exact same. There's instructions there, so you have to do it exactly on the same, versions of compiler and all the other shitty things that are involved there, which I wouldn't even, had to research and know off the top of my hand. But you basically have to compile it exactly like the developer does. And then you can compare the APK that results with the one you get from the service. And you should have the same. Although that is a lot of work, and it will not work every time, and it's time consuming. Right. Actually, as Mode7 points out in Twitch chat here, he could be coerced. Of course, everybody could be coerced. So like everything, this is, we're talking about privacy, but this is a security view we have, and like everything in security, it's gray. There is no absolute security for a computing device. The secure computer is turned off and not connected to the power or the internet, right? So it's gray, but that doesn't mean we should give up. It just means like you can never be, if you want to be 100% sure, and most nerds want to be, you probably never can. But there is. So for WhatsApp, you don't have reproducible builds. But one of the reasons I think actually WhatsApp is okay to use is, yes, they could do that. They could backdoor their app, without telling anybody, disable the encryption. They could. But you have to think they have a lot to. If they ever do that, right? They've lost their, the press will be on them like flies on dog shit. If they ever do that is a huge story. They will never live that down. Their reputation will be tarnished forever. So I think it's actually relatively unlikely that a company like WhatsApp would do that. I also think it would be discovered at some point. So you could think, yeah, they would do that themselves, but maybe they get coerced by an intelligence service. Could all happen, of course. It's all within the realm of possibility, but I think they would fight against that tooth and nail. Maybe they can't at some point, but you have that with every app, right? So, and the thing people are worried about that WhatsApp is handing over the message content to Facebook, which is what people were genuinely worried about, either because the news stories were wrong or they misunderstood them. That's just not the case. That's not something you should be worried about. So Real Funky Duck also says in Twitch chat, pretty easy for them to get busted if they use their sledgehammer approach to advertising. Yes, it would immediately. Yeah, people would get suspicious immediately. Exactly. If you talk about something on WhatsApp and then suddenly you get apps in Facebook, right? You just talked only to your wife in WhatsApp about you having like an STD, and then you open Facebook and it goes like, oh, here you have this STD. People will get suspicious really quickly. Now, see, I don't think Facebook actually wants that. Now, the data this tosses about is something that is important, but something that people don't understand. And most people don't understand. Especially not, mainstream journalists and the people, most of their audience. And that's a metadata, right? So, way before Snowden, I can't remember where I read this, but this is not the only source. I've read this, and Snowden has actually there's a lot of stuff in the Snowden revelations about this. But I read this from this was like a retired intelligence services guy or whatever. But they basically said, look, you don't even need, if you do, let's say you want to find terrorists, right? You don't even need their message content. It was something like, what if Al Qaeda, they generally encrypted stuff as well. It's like, that doesn't, it's not the end of the world, because basically what he said was, with metadata, you can basically figure out everything that's important. Metadata is, so if me and my wife we use a messenger and all our message content is encrypted, metadata is, who am I, who is she, where is she, where am I, when are we writing, all this kind of, and that's the stuff I talked about on the show before. This is why it's almost impossible to remain anonymous if somebody has GPS locations of you, because they know when you are where, right? And they know when you don't move, where we at night, and they know where you sleep, when you get up in the morning, and from Monday to Friday, every time at 8 o'clock in the morning, you leave this one place and then travel to the other place, stay there for 8 hours and then travel back. They know where you live and they know where you work. And you can figure a lot of that stuff out. And this thing I read was about, trying to unmask terrorist cells. And you can build a social graph and you can figure out who talks to whom. And then you can figure out who's in the group, right? And who's just there sometimes. And you can figure all this stuff out with metadata. And the same goes for advertisements. You can figure basically from this kind of metadata just by, you gotta imagine, you gotta remember that, Facebook has your contact book, but they also have the contact book of everybody else. So they know everybody. And they know, they just by this sheer amount of data, they can just figure out so many things. They can but just by your metadata tell how old you are, what gender you are, right? How, just by where you live, when you get up, you can filter all these groups, and they can probably figure out when you were born, what kind of demographic you are, how much you earn. And yes, that's basically Alex on Twitch also points out, on mobile, of course, there's tons of metadata. Now, so and they have so much metadata. The interesting thing for Facebook to own an app like WhatsApp is specifically not maybe the message content. You just want an app that people use all the time. And it knows all these things about you, your location, and all of these things. And they just want that. And that they hand that off from WhatsApp to Facebook is significant. It is significant, especially, because if you use WhatsApp, you have to upload your address book, which is why, really you can't use it for business purposes in the EU, for example, but everybody still does. And you can, that is significant. That is significant, but that is not what people are thinking about when they say they want to switch from WhatsApp. And to be honest, switching from WhatsApp in this case doesn't help you at all, which is the point I always pointed out when the story was going on. I think I actually wrote a column for this, about this for a newspaper in Germany, because I said, look, you have a Facebook account. You probably have the Facebook app on your phone. If you talk to normal people on the street, right? And the normal guy in the street, oh, I'm going to go off WhatsApp because they're evil and give all my data to Facebook, is using the Facebook app. It's next, on the home screen. It's probably next The WhatsApp app. Like if you deinstall the WhatsApp apps, it's not going to help you. In this case, they have also the metadata still. They know who you are. Right? It's Facebook. I mean, if you really, if you quit Facebook and you don't have an Instagram account, and now you don't want, like, WhatsApp's the only thing you use, and you don't want that data to go to Facebook, that's a valid point, right? Get off WhatsApp. Completely agree with you. But that's like, it must be less than like 0.1% of the population. I mean, pretty much everybody has a Facebook account. Facebook has supplanted, those small business websites, right? There's tons of small business websites, small businesses where they like restaurants, hairdressers, all these kinds of people, like game stores, where they just don't have a website anymore. It's just like a Facebook page, right? So lots of groups, family groups, all this kind of stuff happening within Facebook. And that's the real problem, I feel. That's a big problem. And of course, from a privacy standpoint, the worst problem here is not them, but then looking at the metadata of WhatsApp on your phone and what they know from that. If you are logged into Facebook and you use a web browser, they have these cookies and beacons all over the place because of advertising and login buttons, right, from websites and share buttons and all of this crap. They know every site you visit on the internet, probably. I mean, I'm talking, I'm not, when I say these kind of things, I'm not specifically talking to you, the listener of this podcast, because chances are you are different. This is why you're listening to this. But just imagine I'm talking to, like, I don't know, your dad or your mom, right? They don't know this, and they're worried about, like, WhatsApp giving Facebook some metadata, but they're not worried about Facebook literally tracking every click they do. Because I guarantee you, all the websites that these people are visiting have some, it's the same with Google, right? They have double click. It's like fucking everywhere. So they know wherever you are on the web. That's how they get their information. That's how they give you these shitty ads. This is why they know so much about you. But that's a topic for another day, I feel. But that's the thing. And websites like, let's quote from The Verge. I mean, they got it that this is a thing from 2016. Quoting from The Verge on this toss change, writing on this. A bit of irony in all of this data sharing WhatsApp users are so keen to avoid has already likely been happening for a vast majority. I'm sorry. Again, a bit of. I need some Earl Grey. Brain ain't working. A bit of irony in all of this data sharing WhatsApp users are so keen to avoid has already likely been happening for a vast majority of those. What is that? Did I copy and paste this wrong? Can't they write English? Sorry, I need to click through to the source now. It could have been that I just completely. No. Is that actually a functional sentence? A bit of irony in all of this data sharing WhatsApp users are so keen to avoid has already likely been happening for a vast majority of the... I think what they're trying to say is it's a bit of an irony that all of this data sharing WhatsApp users are so keen to avoid has already likely been happening for a vast majority of those who use the messaging platform. Sorry, when I read this and put this in the show notes, it made sense. Now my brain isn't parsing it. Yeah, Mode 7 in Twitch probably, Twitch chat probably has the right idea. I'm not drinking beer. That must be the problem. Actually, I had a very long day and felt a bit sleepy before the show, and I thought beer might maybe not improve this, but maybe that was a bit of an error. Which I'll fix in post. I can probably have a break here later that you won't notice on the podcast, and then suddenly I'm drinking beer. Anyway, so, that's a bit of an irony because basically it's been happening. The company let users opt out of data sharing with Facebook for only a brief amount of time back in 2016, 2 years after Facebook purchased the platform. After that, new signups and those who didn't manually opt out of data sharing have had some WhatsApp information, principally their phone number and profile name, shared with the larger social network for ad targeting and other purposes. So to sum this all up, I'm not really against people going to more secure messages, not Telegram, but stuff like Signal, right? And, apparently, as we said before, so many people have actually been going to Signal that their servers were down for a bit. Or as somebody was earlier making jokes in Twitch chat, a Signal point of failure. But, the thing is, what you have to look at, I feel, is like where the problems actually are and not where people think they are. So I think we need to evaluate this with a clear mind. And I hate this nerd reflex, which I hate because I think I've been guilty of it in the past, of just going, you need to get off that, right? WhatsApp might be the right platform for some, right? It's just it's a platform with a massive user base. And, I'd rather my parents use WhatsApp than Telegram, because they'll never turn on the end-to-end encryption option in Telegram. They will never find it, probably, right? And Telegram is not a trustworthy company. Not that I think Facebook is, but at least Facebook is so big and has so much to lose, and they have shareholders and they have fiduciary responsibility, and their executives will get sued up the wazoo if they do something really, really egregious. That I feel like, yeah, and they probably know everything about you anyway. So I don't think this is something. If they were reading your message contents, I would say yes, definitely get off the platform. But since it uses really good end-to-end encryption, and as long as it keeps using that, I feel like maybe WhatsApp isn't so much of a problem here. But if you actually want to get off WhatsApp, which I understand, or maybe you just want to evaluate something else, I have an idea. I have something that many producers told me about, and then I finally got around to looking at now that we can look at. That might be an interesting alternative, especially if you're a nerd. And if it's not an alternative, at least it's something worth looking at and learning about. So I think at this point we should talk a little bit about The Matrix. Right, and at this point I will be taking a break because I think maybe getting a beer wasn't such a bad idea. So I'm just going to save this here, and I'm going to take a quick break. But before we do that, what's Mode 7 saying? When Picard says secure channel, how does that work? Let's just use what he has. Simple. What military grade Starfleet encryption? I don't think there's a precedent in Star Trek for that ever being broken, right? Usually they just have human problems, but you do have to wear weird clothes. I actually like Starfleet uniforms. If that was the downside, I'd be actually up for just wearing, if everybody just wore Starfleet uniforms. I think that would be a good idea. Anyway, yes, Alex. By the way, hello. I'm just gonna call you Alex because I don't know what the hell. Quick Slayer. How do you say that? I don't know. Thanks for being around, and thanks for the follow. Definitely. I think you haven't. Just made a quick disclaimer. Usually, I interact a lot more with chat. But because this is a podcast, to be fair to the people to listen to it afterwards, I read everything. But, if I just stream The Witcher or something, which I'm going to do tomorrow, I'll just interact more. So just, is Alex in base 64? Well, that's perfect encryption. So it's Alex. Huh. It's actually, that's interesting. Anyway, I'm just going to put some music on here for you, and then have have a very, very quick break, and I'm back immediately with a beer. Wait, let me just see. Let's turn the volume knob down a little bit here, and maybe not that much. See you in a bit. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back soon with the second part of this podcast. Right, here we are, back. Right. Let's get that set up. Drink the rest of the tea. I actually have some Grimbergen, but I'm saving that for tomorrow for The Witcher. Speaking of Belgian beer, I will go with German beer. This is personally my favorite beer, but only because you can't drink that much Grimbergen. I fucking love Grimbergen, but it's like at some point, Belgian beer is just, most Belgian beer is just way too strong for, like, you know, drinking it all night. So I like to space it out. I think it's Duvel. I got some Duvel. Duvel. I'll be opening that tomorrow. Anyway, let's get back to this. Guinness, man. I could go for some Guinness on tap. That would be amazing. Right, let's keep going here. We need to put a chapter marker here. Oh, probably missed that in the first one, but okay. Right. Let's do this. So, Matrix. So I was thinking. So I was at FOSDEM. Well, at FOSDEM. I was covering FOSDEM over the weekend, and it wasn't in Brussels. It was online, of course. The first time FOSDEM ever wasn't in Brussels. And they did everything over Matrix, which is a messaging protocol, and they're tied in Jitsi for like video calls and things like that. But I thought it was really interesting, and I had some producers talk to me about Matrix and recommend it. But it's like, I was gonna look into it, but I just didn't really have the time, and this just prompted me to do this properly. And also, there's always, if you do stuff in open source, especially, or if you do stuff with software, there's always somebody coming along. You should try this. This is the best. I love this software, and you never really know, right? It's like I get so many of these recommendations and then I'm quite wary. But at the point where like FOSDEM uses something like this, you listen up. You're like, whew. It's suddenly gotten very interesting there. And so I looked at it, and it is definitely very interesting. And the thing I like about it is, if you are thinking of, I want to go away from WhatsApp, right? But why not do something radical and like switch for other reasons as well? Because why switch to another messenger, which, Signal, okay, yeah, which is open source and secure and all of that. But at the end of the day, is another one of these silos, right? So the big problem with these things is get everybody off WhatsApp, but people are sticky on WhatsApp because all your friends are there, right? It takes basically everybody switching to a messenger for it to become viable to you. And you end up like with having all these messengers because some people are on Telegram, some are on Signal, some are on Threema, and you have all this crap. When what we really need, right, is something like email, which, federated as is the new word everybody likes to use. Whereas, yes, technically email is federated and all this is modeled after email, but nobody thinks of emails being federated, really. I don't really like the term federated that much. What we need is something like email. We need an open standard that is interoperable, right? And where you can call it federation if you want. So basically you want something where I can open an account with a provider on a server, and then that is my email account. But I can still send email to everybody else as an email address, and we need that for messengers. And that's exactly what Matrix is trying to do. By the way, I am drinking beer now, which is through the magic of podcast editing, of course. So that is what Matrix is trying to do. And as FOSDEM showed, actually quite successfully, because that worked really well. And they had, I have that here somewhere in the story. Everything, of course, Private Citizen or Press, where the show notes are. A story here from Bradley Kuhn, which is something I know quite well. And they are saying they had 33,600 attendees peak time and still 22,000 on the second day. So a lot of people were using this. And it worked really well. And so I thought, well, let's try this for myself. Get a server. I don't really have the time or the inclination to set up one myself. I could do it. I've done all these things in the past. Usually when I was a student, I just set up a server and do all this. But these days, I've got a lot to do. I don't have enough time, and I'd rather pay somebody. So I rented a server, and I set one up. There's a link in the show notes to what they call these rooms, basically like chat rooms or like IRC channels. And I set one up for the Private Citizen that is public, that you can just join. So if you have a Matrix account, which you can get for free, matrix.org is where the main foundation is, and you can just sign up to their thing. They call these things home servers. So if you run your own server, so mine's at fab.industries. It has a web interface, but you at chat.fab.industries, but you can't sign up for that. So you can't sign up for the server, but you can join this room, right? This public room, and I created one for my blog as well. And you can go there if you have a matrix.org account, or you have an account on your own home server, and it seems to work quite well. We tested that with some people. There's actually some people in there, Funky Ducks in there, and Yevgeny is in the room, and it seems to work pretty well. So let's get into what is Matrix. So Wikipedia says Matrix is an open standard and communication protocol for real-time communication. It aims to make real-time communication, they say communication a lot, work seamlessly between different service providers. just like standard simple mail transfer protocol email, SMTP, does now for store and forward email service. By allowing users with accounts at one communication service provider to communicate with users of a different service provider via online chat, voice over IP, and video telephony. Such protocols have been around before, such as XMPP or Jabber, but Matrix is not based on that or any other communication protocol. From a technical perspective, it is an application layer communication protocol for federated real-time communication. It provides HTTP APIs and open source reference implementations for securely distributing and persisting messages in JSON format, of course, over an open federation of service. Can integrate with standard web services via WebRTC, facilitating browser-to-browser applications. Now, this is, of course, federation, they call it here. It is something different than email. It works like email, but for real-time chat is a lot more complicated because if I send you an email and I've got your email address, right, my mail server, I sent this email from my client to my mail server, and then it will be at privatecitizen.press, right? I'll send it to producers at privatecitizen.press or whatever, and my mail server will go, okay, let's look up privatecitizen.press. It looks up the domain, looks up the DNS, looks up the mail server entry, and then sends it there and hands it over to that server. Whereas if you want to federate real-time messages, it's a bit more like what Mastodon does or something like that, where you actually have different, if you have a home server and you join this room on my server, then these servers need to continuously talk to each other, right? It's not a one-off thing like email. Email, there's no persisting connection between those servers. Real Funky Duck, who is in the in the room and also on Twitch as I record this, says this home server was being shitty though. Probably, I think he was saying he was running it on a Raspberry Pi, and it probably ran out of CPU and stuff like that. But so it is complicated, right? It's more complicated than email, but in the core, it should work like that. And that's exactly what we want. Because we don't want these messenger silos. We want, if something like this has any chance of being adopted, it needs to be adopted as a... They kind of want to be the chat equivalent to email, basically an internet protocol, right? They want to be the standard for chat, which I don't know if they can do that. Who knows? There's lots of momentum to overcome. Lots of people also have tried to replace email. That's kind of like a bit of an email. Well, not really, but, it's basically, I think, what these people wish would happen. So we don't know if that's going to work. But I think it's a goal worth supporting, and it's really what we all want, because we don't want these migrations. Now everybody goes from WhatsApp to Signal, and then in 5 years something happens to Signal, and then everybody's like, no, this one's better now and it's more secure, and then it goes over. By the way, Alex in Twitch that actually says the server doesn't have to be fast, but it should be stable. Actually, that's exactly the point. This is why something like this is hard. In real-time communication, actually the speed actually matters somewhat. This is kind of real-time. They use something called, it says somewhere in the Wikipedia article. It's like, what do they call this? It's like optimistic forwarding or something it's called. It's like, basically it tries to keep all servers synchronized, even if you're offline, or if your server is not connected to other servers in the federation, then it will just, keep it on your server and then send it on whenever it can. So it's not really always real time, but it tries its best. And that's, that's why this is hard to do. And I'm not saying it's going to work. And one thing that's very important, I'm not saying you should use it. I'm currently I'm trying it out. I don't know if it's even a solution for me, but I think it's interesting. And I think, since producers were interested in this and several people told me about this, thought it's well worth talking about it. So you can have a look. This good point from Alex. The clients, I'm going to talk about the client in a little bit. They're a bit shitty. WhatsApp's a great client. It is, but, it's also grown for several years. It wasn't that good in the beginning. Now, the challenging thing about this is, again, to make it work federated, right? So the problem with XMPP and Java was always that it didn't work as seamless as just having a client, This is me installing WhatsApp, somebody else installing WhatsApp. It's much easier. And yes, this is not neither I think the protocol nor the clients are in a state where say this is usable for everybody. Right, I've been trying this out with my wife, and she ran into some really weird problems, basically having to do with end-to-end encryption and the way you authenticate clients and stuff. It's not easy, but I can see, it works, and that's very important, and it works on a scale for something like FOSDEM, which is great, and I can definitely see it getting there. But let's talk about the client. So obviously, it's been open standard. There are several clients. The reference client from the guys who also do the protocol, it's called Element. That's what I'm using at the moment. That is available as a web app. It's available native on Windows, macOS, and Linux, and also as an Android and iOS app. So I've been using the Windows app, the iOS app, and the web app. I haven't installed it on my Linux system yet, but I will do that. The home server I rented a server from EMS, which is called Element. That's Element Matrix Services. That is basically the company that's behind pushing development, paying for development on this. And they basically pay for that by having server renting available. There's also, it's not cheap. There's also a Swiss company that offers this. But so far it's been running quite well. It's comparable to the Mastodon server I have, which is the service, and then they set it up for you, and they, you click a button and your hardware gets provisioned or whatever, and then you have a web interface where you can configure it. It's quite cool. So let's go on a little bit about what Wikipedia says how this works. Matrix targets use cases like voice over IP, Internet of Things, and instant messaging, including group communication, along with a longer-term goal to be a generic messaging and data synchronization system for the web. If that works, that would certainly be good, I think. The protocol supports security and replication, maintaining full conversation history with no single points of control or failure. Existing communication services can integrate with the Matrix ecosystem, so they have bridges to stuff like Discord and IRC, for example. The Matrix standard specifies RESTful HTTP APIs for securely transmitting and replicating JSON data between Matrix-capable clients, servers, and services. So you can pretty much implement this in anything, which is kind of cool. You could write a little Python library probably that, if you have a server that sends like server warning messages to this, which people have been doing with WhatsApp, but WhatsApp never really supported. So this is obviously being open standard. You can do with it what you want, which is pretty cool. Clients send data by putting it to a, quote, room on their server, which then replicates the data over all Matrix servers participating in this room. Right? So if your home server joins my room, my private citizen room will start replicating. Right? So right now, so you can look at you can look at like the room information. And it shows you the people that are in there, and like if you click on them, you can also see where they are, right? What kind of account they have, and things like that. And it'll at some way you can actually dig into where which service this gets replicated to, which is pretty cool. Right. This data is Okay, so which then replicates the data over all the Matrix servers participating in this room. This data is signed using a Git-style signature to mitigate tampering, and the federated traffic is encrypted with HTTPS and signed with each server's private key to avoid spoofing. So I think what they kind of do is they probably, I think I'll have to look deeper into this, but I think with Git style signature is not only a hash over the message, but I think they chain them together so that, the messages I post are just, cryptographically linked together, kind of like, the blockchain does it as well, where you wouldn't, so you can't just, a malicious server in the Federation can't just enter like messages from me that I never sent, like in the chain, which is all of these kind of things you need to think about when you do something like this. Replication follows eventual consistency semantics. This is it. Follows eventual consistency semantics, allowing servers, that's the thing I was talking about earlier, also called optimistic consistency, I think. Allowing servers to function even if offline or after data loss by resynchronizing missing history from other participating servers. Which is pretty cool, right? If you do this kind, so you can already see how it's much more complicated than something like email. It has some aspects of the Fediverse, right, where you're pulling stuff from other servers and you have to synchronize with them. The Olm library provides for optional end-to-end encryption on a room-by-room basis, which is, I think, actually now the default, via a double ratchet algorithm implementation. It can ensure that conversation data at rest is only readable by the room participants. With it configured, data transmitted over Matrix is only visible as ciphertext to the Matrix servers, can be decrypted only by authorized participants in the room. The Olm and MegOlm, an expansion of Olm to better suit the need for bigger rooms, libraries have been subject of a cryptographic review by NCC Group, whose findings are publicly available and have been addressed by the Matrix here. I've linked those in the show notes as well. Private citizen, not press. So the cool thing about this also is that it's kind of, when we do this and we have end-to-end encryption, you still have to trust somebody, right? You have to trust the guys that you get the software from, right? But still, you could, like, if you, let's say you run your own server, right, on Linux, and you compile that from source, and you've checked the source, right? Or you check that the source you have is the same, that's the public source, and you compile that, and then you just use that, right, with maybe over the web interface or with a client that you compile. You could actually be much more, Steve Gibson in security now always calls this TNO, trust no one. You could be, which of course never happens. You always have to trust somebody, but the idea, you could be much more TNO with this. Which I think is cool, like especially if you're a nerd. The servers, as I said before, they're called home servers. The actual software, so you have Element is the client, the reference client, Matrix is the protocol. Now the reference implementation of the server is called Synapse, although they're currently rewriting that. I don't know what's written in, but they're rewriting it in Go. And that is currently called in beta and has some issues, I think, but it's called Dendrite. And I just find this interesting. And for me personally, if you're going like, why would you switch? For me, this is not a question of switching from WhatsApp. I'll have to keep WhatsApp around, right? I'm a journalist. I need to communicate with people, with sources. I need to be reachable. Everybody's on WhatsApp currently. As long as everybody's on WhatsApp, it's like I can't really get off Facebook. I need kind of a Facebook presence, right? I don't check it often. I don't post there much, but it's like I kind of need to be there, and I need it in a pinch for people to just look me up, right? Some people just look you up on Facebook. They don't look you up on LinkedIn. And you need to find something. And they need to be able to contact me there, even though if I don't like it and I don't check it often. but I kind of need that. So this is the same thing with WhatsApp. I can never really get off that. I've got 50 messages installed on my phone anyway. But I find this still interesting, especially because you can run your own server. You can have your own server. You can be more, a bit more self-sufficient maybe. I like the idea of having like a protocol, a chat protocol of the internet, for the whole internet that is like this, that is federated, that works kind of like email. And I'm just not a fan of XMPP and Jabber. This is just, so maybe this will work. But the most important point for me here, why I think this is worth something supporting for me, is I think we need this. I've talked about this in several previous shows. I've outlined this culture war that's going on, and this political partisanship, and the cancel culture, and the need to kick people off Twitter and stuff like that. And I think we need to make our digital infrastructure more resilient against this, especially against censorship. And federated is great there, and that's what we need. We need to eliminate these single points of failure where if Twitter doesn't like you, it doesn't like your politics, then you're gone, right? And I run a Mastodon server, and I find that interesting. I find the Fediverse interesting, but I have a feeling that really doesn't work because I've been interested in federated social networks before most people knew what that was. I was very early on Identica. I was a long time, used that for a long time. And the problem is, with a social network, I don't think federation works for social networks. Because a social network is only interesting to people if a lot of people are in one place. Right? People use Twitter because the celebrity use Twitter. People use Instagram because the celebrity use Instagram. It's interesting to the media because everybody's on Twitter and it's public. I mean, I've talked about this before. And I don't think that is something for the average person. The upside of federation with something like this, they will never understand it, right? Because you're not talking privacy in this case, because you are on a public network anyway, right? So the privacy is not a factor here. The censorship that I'm worried about, that maybe you're worried about if you listen to the show, it's not something people are worried about. It's not really something they really understand. I know this because, I talk to people about it, and normal people, in air quotes, it's not a topic for them, right? They're like, why are you writing about this? This is like, people thrown off Twitter, Trump thrown off Twitter is great. That's amazing, right? They don't get that, the problem I think we are having. So I just don't think it's a use case for a social network. I don't think it's that the problems that federation solves there, resilience against censorship mostly, is not something people worry about. People were like this. They're like, oh well, if social networks are bad, I'll just get off social networks. Whereas messengers is a completely different point. Right, you can live without a social network like Facebook or like Twitter. You can completely live without that. You don't need that. It's just that's just ego stroking most of the time. Yes, Facebook is evolving into families meeting together, but I actually think something like Matrix, something like a messaging protocol is much better for that. And you see that, and you see people migrating from social networks to messengers right now. You also see people who have problems with censorship, being thrown off Twitter, and people who are branded by by the mainstream as nut jobs and conspiracy, theorists. They go to stuff like Telegram and stuff like that. So they go to messengers, and I feel like that's actually an interesting impulse, and actually one I'm having now as well, which is why I think Matrix is so interesting. Whereas I think more and more there's something that Mastodon it's not interesting at all, right? And I have there's other issues with Mastodon that I've written about on my blog, fab.industries, a while ago. I don't, especially Mastodon, I don't trust the developers. Like they have an open source program or system and a federated social network, and then they want to censor people, right? They're like, oh yes, we're not gonna federate with Gap because they're all Nazis, right? And I don't even want to talk about if that's correct or not, right? I don't understand people who say we need to federate and we need to become independent from single points of control, and then they're the ones executing control. I know that you can get around this. I know this is open standards and you can write your own implementation of the protocol and your own software, and then you can federate with whoever you want. I know all of that. I'm just saying a developer whose goal it is to be to get around these, to root around these censorships and get around these single points of failure and control, right? Because corporations are evil and they want to control us. And then as an open source developer, you're doing the exact same thing, right? I don't trust people like that. So that's one of the problems I have with Mastodon. But I think it's more important what I said before, that I just feel like it's more important for messengers. And I'm actually exploring this. So I'm trying. I got this Matrix server not because I need a messenger. I could just go. I am on Signal. I've been using it for years. But I like to explore this intersection of social network and messenger. And that's why I'm like, that's kind of what FOSDEM used it for. It wasn't a messenger. It was like all these chat rooms, more like IRC basically, which goes more into the direction of a social network. But I like having these public rooms, like having one for the private citizen, and then you as the listeners, producers, being able to communicate with me in there. I like that, and I think maybe that is more interesting to me than the Fediverse, because basically that has all the features from the Fediverse, right? This is like the better technology. It can do everything Mastodon can do, but it can also be a private messenger, right? So I can run this server and I can have public rooms to talk to you. I can do one-on-one conversation with anybody, any one of you, with my wife. I can have private rooms for my family where I talk to, family members that are remote. So it's all of that. Like, it can replace these closed Facebook groups. It can replace public discussion groups, like forums and stuff like that. That's why I think it's very interesting. It's just more. It's just, as a technology, it has many more use cases than just being a federated social network. And of course, because I see these trends in society, to go from social networks to more, to go from something like Twitter to something that can be public but can also be closed. Where I'm like, okay, if my stance is that Trump isn't the worst person in the world and everybody keeps just shouting to me on Twitter and there's like a few people I talk to, why don't we just go to our own place, right? Why don't we just open like a Telegram group or whatever, like, or WhatsApp group or anything like this, or now a room in Matrix where we can talk, where we don't have to defend ourselves all the time against these crazy people. A few years ago I would have said this is a bad direction for people to go in, because it will, of course, enforce filter bubbles. But from what I've seen, like on public social networks like Twitter in the last 2 years, I don't think it can get worse. Like people are having the worst filter bubble on a public network, right? They're just building their own filter bubbles. So it doesn't matter if you're building them in a messenger, in a closed environment, or in a everything's public social network. People are still building the same filter bubbles, right? They don't want to see the other side of the argument. So I don't think that's something you can solve with technology. I think that's just a psychological problem. I mean, that's problem. It's a psychological phenomenon that is happening. Anyway, so that's why I think Matrix is interesting. With the caveat that yes, the clients are not there yet. They're, from what I've seen in the last week, perfectly usable, right? And you can do a lot with them, but that is not polished yet. And there's other clients, of course. I've only tried Element so far. There are other possibilities, but I don't think you can't get just your random friend or family member to switch from WhatsApp to that yet. But that's not why I'm talking to you about this, right? I think you're probably, if you listen to this, like me, you're into technology, you're probably on the forefront, you're an early adopter, and I think maybe it's interesting for you to know about this. Yeah, and as Reader Funky Doctor says, it just needs better UX before the non-technical folks will be on board. And I think, maybe it will just, people will just get on board without knowing, because I mean there's interesting developments. I mean, the French government is using it, the German armed forces are using it. Like if it's if we're talking the protocol, then the client actually doesn't really matter, right? If a big company starts says, okay, we want to base our in-house community. We don't like Microsoft Teams. We want to do this in Matrix, right? We want to avoid Zoom or whatever. We're going to do this in Matrix. And they might as well write their own client, right? At the point where, let's say, Red Hat says, okay, we want to do all our internal stuff. We have so many remote workers. We want to do all this we want to standardize on Matrix, right? And then go like, oh God, the client is horrible. It'll take a year. They'll pay some Red Hat employees will figure it out, right? They'll write their own version. They'll upstream whatever. The Abwehr uses I don't know. The Abwehr is the defense of the German football team. The Bundeswehr is using it. Yes, the interior, the defense ministry, I think, is actually using it, which is pretty interesting. They're usually not on the forefront of cutting edge technology, the German armed forces, but I think they're trying to change that. They have this whole cyber. When von der Leyen was still the Bundeswehr, she did this whole cyber thing. They're cybering it up. So I find it mostly interesting because if you have big adopters like this, like these some of these problems will just get solved, right? They'll just do their own client, and if you're lucky, it'll be open source because the rest is open source anyway, and then we can all use it. I watch more soccer than military news, says Alex. You mean you watch more football? No, that's good. And so and there are other clients. So I find it just interesting, and I thought I'll let you know, and please have a look. Please tell me what you think. As always, I appreciate feedback a lot. Speaking of feedback, let's talk about the feedback I've gotten. Let's start wrapping up the show. So yes, if you go to privatecitizen.press, there's a contact link just up the top, and there's lots of contact information on there. The Matrix room isn't on there yet because I don't know if I'll keep it around, but there's a link for it's pretty much up the top of this episode. This is episode 56. So privatecitizen.press/episode/56. You can get there and you can join. And you can give me the feedback on Matrix in Matrix. How cool would that be? Oh, I just spilled some beer. At which point we have so much Matrix involved that I'm just expecting Keanu Reeves to pop in. I spilled some beer and I've got nothing to wipe it off. So I'm just gonna use my sock. And then I'll have a beer sock. That's okay. We don't want it to seep into the wood, I guess. So better in the sock than the wood. That's probably more information than you need from me recording this podcast, but that's how it goes. Anyway, I had some feedback pertaining to a last episode, which was my 1 year anniversary special. Barry Williams, long-time listener of the show and long-time producer, says, as an Australian teacher, I could not ask for a better response to my question, who is your favorite teacher? Actually, it didn't occur to me when I answered that question that he is a teacher from Australia. Also, I did not have a great time at school, but soon found out if you do not respond to the bullies, they don't get what they want. Well, that didn't work for me, but, maybe it works for you. I should have just hit the worst guy in the face, and then that would have been that. You live and learn. Also, I was trying not to monopolize all the questions, but since I don't think there was a danger of that, Mike was also asking a lot of questions. But since you mentioned it in the podcast, what is your favorite coffee? I'm a weird coffee person who drinks single origin coffee direct from good roasters. I also watch far too many YouTube videos on all things coffee. That was a special AMA episode where I just answered questions from the producers. I don't want to keep doing that, but I'll give you one off. I will do this. I'll answer you this one. I already answered, to be fair, in the Discord channel. But my favorite coffee is very simple. There's a huge the biggest German coffee company called Chibo, and they have a very mainstream coffee called Guatemala Grande, or they renamed it recently. It's called Latin Grande now. And I drink that. I've been drinking that for years. Katie and me love it. And if they ever change the blend, or if they get rid of it, I will probably have to drive to the Chibo headquarters in Hamburg and take somebody hostage until they reinstate it, because it's just that's my taste. In the morning, I do in the morning ITM. I do for me the important part is making the coffee. I've settled a long time ago. Katie and me settled on French press. I love a French press, and what we do is I hand grind the coffee, and then freshly, and then I put it in the French press. And to me, that makes the best cup of coffee. I used to have. When I was still a student and we were living in Bonn, we'd have a electrical grinder, and that made a hell of a noise, and also it broke very quickly. And from then on, I just went to hand grinders, and I bought I think it's from Hario. It's like a Japanese company. So it's a ceramic burr grinder, and I'm on my second now. The first one we ground the burrs completely to nothing. They last for ages. They're great. The downside is I have a problem when I'm not awake enough. So I need coffee to wake up in the morning, right? But when I'm so sleepy that I basically can't grind coffee, there's this like chicken and egg problem where I'm too tired to grind coffee, but to get out of the tiredness, I need coffee. Sometimes when we anticipate something like this, we grind it in the evening. But yeah, so, and as far as coffee, it's just that basic coffee. I think most, I drink a fancy coffee once in a while, but most other coffees are, to me, coffee is just not, it's a bit like beer. I like an IPA once in a while, but you can't just not drink IPA all the time. And coffee even more for me is like a ritual thing that I have every morning. And most fancy coffees are just too fancy. They're either a little bit too bitter, they're a little bit too fruity, they have all these different tastes, they're maybe a bit too strong, maybe not strong enough, maybe they're too acidic. So I just like that blend. And that's a very round and very basic and good blend is just strong enough. I know how to do it perfectly, and that's just my thing. And that's my favorite coffee. But we didn't really have a rant this episode, so I can give you a rant. So I'm going to give you a coffee-related rant as a bonus here. One of the things I've noticed over the last decades, which is a pet peeve of mine that I absolutely hate, is all these fancy, you can have a fancy coffee bar or a cafe. I don't give a crap. I don't give a crap how you fucking, have your Carlsbad-Kanne or your French press or your glass filter system or you have cold brew. But the problem is you have latte macchiato, you have all this shit, right? Cappuccino. It's all based on espresso. And you can do all of that. But at the moment where I completely lose it is when these places only have espresso beans, right? Because what I need in the morning is a cup of coffee. I don't need a fucking espresso. I like espresso. Espresso is great, especially after, a big meal or something like that. Or like just to get up, like to get power, like in the middle of the day or whatever, get an espresso. But it does not, when I get up in the morning, while working, I need a coffee. And with that, I mean a filter coffee, a good old-fashioned filter coffee. It doesn't even have to be a French press when I'm out. Like maybe just a normal filter coffee. I will appreciate that so much. And often I'm happier at like a random petrol station with some random shitty filter coffee than the most fancy cafe where they just have like an espresso. And then like, I want a coffee. Yeah, we can give you an Americano, which basically means you take espresso and water it down with water. It's not the same as filter coffee because espresso tastes very differently. That's a pet peeve. I hate that. And I love Italians. I love Italy. It's one of my favorite countries. It has undeniably the best cuisine in the world. It has the best food. The people are very nice. I love when we're talking football. I love the way they play football. I love Italians. I love their cars, and I ride an Italian motorcycle because I love it, and I love Italians. But what I hate is that they don't have real coffee. Espresso in the morning is the worst thing you can do to me. I mean, at some point, I'd rather no coffee than I need a coffee, and when I work, I need a coffee. So I wanted for a long time to start this initiative in Germany, maybe this sticker or this website, or where you can have like a seal on the door that is called Oma's Kaffee. Oma is German for grandmother, so it's grandma's coffee, and that just means that whatever fancy stuff you have, you also have a good basic filter coffee. Always there in like one of these big American coffee things that just sits there, that gets done every 3 hours, and that's just basic good coffee. Just fucking do that. It costs you nothing. Just do that. One of my best coffee experiences was just this diner we went to when we were in Las Vegas, off the Strip. My wife was like, I can't stand this casino hotel breakfast anymore. Let's go somewhere else. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna find a traditional American diner, and we went off the Strip to some, I don't know, it was quite a bit away from the Strip. Had to go there by car, of course, and in the Mustang, that was that place was amazing. It was so good. They had like these huge pots of coffee, and like you had these waitresses running around in these like 60s outfits, except they were all like 50, but they had like these outfits in their hair. They would just immediately, you drink a sip, put your cup down, they would fill it back up. Like bottomless. Oh, it was so good. The table we sat in, like behind my wife, was this framed newspaper clipping from like original, right? Yellowed as fuck. Original newspaper clipping of Kennedy. Like the headline when Kennedy was shot. Like, yeah, and the coffee is super cheap. Exactly. So Oma's coffee. We need that. We need more of that. You can have all your fancy coffees. Just make sure you also have a very basic filter coffee there. And that's it for the feedback. So please send me feedback. Please tell me, what do you think about Matrix? Why do you think it won't take off? What do you think about WhatsApp? What do you think about metadata and encryption and all of that? Please, I like to hear your opinions. And maybe I'll read them out on the show. And if you don't want to get read out on the show, please just say so. Right? If you just want to talk to me, that's fine as well. So please do that. Please contact me. Please send me feedback. privatecitizen.press. And with that, we come to the end of the show, and the point where I just quickly have to tell you how this works. I do this for free. I provide you with information. If you think you get value from that, I'll just ask you to think about how much that is, and maybe give me a little bit back. That's called the value for value model, pioneered by Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak, and I think it's the only way to do proper content, proper journalism these days. So I do have a Patreon site. If you want to sign up there, you can do it. There are a lot of people just kicking me $1 a month, which is amazing. Which only, it's the only thing I ask. That's good. It works. But if you don't like that, if you don't like signing up for things like that, you can of course also send me one-off contributions. I have a PayPal account for that. It's producers@fab.industries. Producers@fab.industries. Yeah, and then you become a producer. Or, if you send me feedback and send me some input, or maybe suggest a show I should do, a topic, I think Funky Duck was one of the people who said, look at Matrix. I'm not sure he thought I would do a podcast episode about it, but, that's what being a producer is all about. So I love Mode 7. This is why I love doing this live on Twitch. I just got a work call and missed half of the fucking show. I'll have to download it. See, this is why this is available as a podcast. So welcome back, Mode 7 on the podcast, right? That's why I do that. So just think about that. That's the value for value model. You don't have to. I wouldn't be putting it out for free if I wasn't okay with you, just getting it for free. I'm just, just asking. Maybe one day, I got somebody just off my head. I don't know. Was it? I think Bennett. Was it Bennett who was like, okay, I'm a student. I can't really afford it right now. But when I graduate, I'm going to support the show. And then he graduated, support the show. So it's awesome. Right, let's thank everybody. But before we do that, quick credits here. Raul Kabzali wrote the theme tune of the podcast, Acoustic Roots. And then I have to thank Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk. They are a great UK hosting company, do cloud hosting. And they host the two servers I use to send you audio files, right? I'll upload them there. They're like my CDN, and it works well, and I couldn't do it without them because, obviously save some money by not having to run those servers. Real Funky Duck is as soon as I get a job, dude. See, same thing. So that's cool. Works for everybody. I completely understand that. Let's thank everybody. Let's thank the people who did pitch in and basically make the show happen. So thanks to Georges, Niall Donegan, Michael Mullen Jensen, Jonathan M. Hathy, Butterbeans, Dave, Steve Hose, Mark Holland, Shelby Kruver, Vlad, Jackie Plage, 1I11G, Philipp Klostermann, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Kai Sears, Fani Mansour, IKN, Dirk Didi, Joe Poser, Matt Jelliman, Michael Small, David Potter, Mika, Martin, Bennett Piatra, Dave Umrish, Larry Glock, Ricky M, Drive Zero, Mr. Amish, Jonathan Edwards, Barry Williams, Avis, Neil, Matt, Captain Eckhead, D, Christoph Martin, and Felipe Carvalho. Thanks to all of you. I appreciate it. A lot of these people have been there for a long time and are very... why don't I remember this word I'm trying to say? God, now my brain, quick. Go to German-English translation website and figure out what I'm trying to say. Very loyal. think loyal was the word I was looking for. Been doing this for a long time. So sometimes I have Wortfindungsschwierigkeiten. It's a great German word. Wortfindungsschwierigkeiten. It basically means word finding difficulties. Yeah, in German we just take words and put them together and make a new word. It's kind of a thing. So thanks to all of you. And I have to thank, because, I'm doing this now on Twitch. Doing this live on Twitch. Ever since I moved to Düsseldorf, I've been doing this, and I've been enjoying this a lot. So thanks to my Twitch subscribers, which are, of course, also pitching in, because, subscribe to the channel. Some of them with Amazon Prime, which doesn't cost them anything if they have a Prime account. So that works well. And so thanks to Mike _the Dane, Galtaran, Redeemer F, Indie Game EX, Andy Pants with a 4, and then Mode 7 is unavailable. And Mode 7 with the 0 and the 7. Go to the show notes. Some of these probably have their own Twitch channels you can check out. And that's it for me for this week. Maybe I'll see you on Matrix one of these days. I will certainly hope we'll hear from each other again, or you will hear from me next Wednesday when I'll release the next Private Citizen. Everything goes according to plan. Until then, remember, I'm fighting for your right to have something to hide. And meanwhile, once in a while, you should aim and misbehave. And now I'm playing us out with an acoustic song. It's called Across Land and Sea by a composer called Christopher Mo Ditlevsen, who I think is from Sweden. And I'm using this as the intro song to my Witcher streams. I'm currently playing The Witcher 1, the original, from 2007. And I'm trying not to get too frustrated. I'm streaming that on Twitch. And that's my intro music for it. And I love this song. It's such a great song. So I'll play you out with that. See you for the next show. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Right, that was that. I will stop this recording now and get this podcast out. If you like this music, I'm betting you like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, at least the music in it, which I think my friend Leafa is playing right now. Let me just check, but she should be. That's in her streaming schedule, and she keeps to that. So Leafa is a friend of mine. I enjoy her streams very much, and I think I'll raid you over to her. Yes, she's riding around with a horse. I think she just fell off her horse there, if I see that correctly. Anyway, I always like her streams. I'm not an Assassin's Creed fan. Well, I would never play it myself, but I enjoy her playing it very much. So if you're inclined to watch a bit more, I'll send you over. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe 2 p.m. Central European time. I will play The Witcher probably the rest of the day. I've decided to take tomorrow half the day off because I've been working my ass off. And I think I've earned that. So, yeah. So maybe see you then. And now I'm trying to open the raid interface, which I never prepare for this. And one of these days, I'll get it. I'll get it all like seamless, and it'll be like completely professional. Anyway, thanks for watching. This was fun. And if you missed some of the show, of course, the podcast will be out immediately. Well, I'll be watching Leaf a little bit and procrastinating, and then I'll put it out. So see you in a bit. Thank you. Maybe see you tomorrow or next week for the next Private Citizen. Rest offline. Bye.